Confidence is usually a good thing until it comes to your finances, because some of the most expensive financial mistakes aren't caused by fear, they're caused by being just a little too confident. Stay tuned, because today we're breaking down the financial mistakes that could be quietly costing you.
Welcome to a Wiser Retirement Podcast, where we cut through the noise and bring you real, honest conversations about investing, retirement, and building lasting wealth. No sales pitches, no gimmicks, just insights to help you stop guessing and start planning your financial future.
Welcome to a Wiser Retirement Podcast. I'm Casey Smith. Today I'm joined with financial advisor William Metcalf to discuss the confident traps that can lead to costly financial mistakes. Hey, William.
Hey, everybody.
So we plan these topics out a quarter in advance. It gives us time to put together notes, and some of them just roll right off the cuff, and other ones require a little more research.
Yeah.
How do you feel about this one? How much prep did you have to put into this one, being a confident male?
I thought it was relatively simple to put together. I think that you know we'll go through and talk through all of the stuff, but I think it's stuff that we see with clients pretty frequently. And honestly, it's not just males. That's where the topic originally started, and I was like going through, and I'm like, I see this in males and females, so we changed up a little bit in terms of the wording, but anyway.
Well, you think about success, and success typically comes from having a lot of confidence at something,
right?
Or perseverance, at least.
Yeah.
And when it comes to investing, there are a lot of biases. In fact, we probably should put those in our show notes of all the different behavioral finance topics that we've covered over the years.
Yeah.
But there's so much. There can be so much bias in confidence, because you're confident, you're really good at what you do, and you're confident you've got life by the horns, right? You've got it all figured out. And in the end, maybe you're not an expert at planning necessarily.
Yeah.
Or even investing, for that matter. It's just like the water cooler talk. You got the friends who, I made XYZ on NVIDIA. I made XYZ on, whatever, right?
Yeah.
And in the end, they never tell you about the ones that cost them half the profits or more of all the wins, right?
Yeah, or when they sold and they caused a big tax problem, and
right.
Because they're not taking that into consideration, and so
Right.
there's a lot of different things that you should be taking into consideration that maybe you're just not aware of, or maybe not an expert at.
So it's not because of lack of intelligence. We're not saying you guys are stupid.
No, not at all.
We're saying success can create blind spots, and you have to be very careful with that. So after working with hundreds of clients, a pattern emerges. It's rarely a lack of effort or intelligence that holds people back financially. It's a set of deeply held beliefs that made sense at one point, but in life quietly quit working as retirement approaches.
Yeah. I feel like everybody has things that you kind of just go by intuition and sort of what feels right or what you think is right. And you're not actually digging into the weeds and looking at what's actually the case. And I think that a lot of what we're going to talk about today is kind of those types of rules where it's like, maybe you haven't gotten a second opinion, maybe you throw it into ChatGPT and ChatGPT says everything looks good. But
ChatGPT is confident in every answer he gives
that's
you,
exactly
even the wrong
right. Yeah, we'll go through these, and I think that some will resonate with a lot of the clients. So,
one thing I find interesting in a stat that was put in our notes here is high income earners report some of the highest financial confidence levels. Yet confidence in actual financial planning outcomes are weakly correlated, according to a FINRA Investor Education, the FINRA Investor Education Foundation. So it's not that you've been doing all wrong, but whether the skills that you have aren't the same ones that carry you through the next 20 to 30 years in your planning.
Yeah. Yeah. And one of the things I'm just going to mention it because we'll come back to it, but is, the bottom line is you got to look at it. So don't just fly by the seat of your pants or again, go by intuition. You actually have to look at what your situation is and maybe bring in an expert to actually look at, and get a good second opinion on it.
So you've been doing a lot of plans.
Mm-hmm.
In your experience, is it harder to help someone who is struggling or someone who has been very successful?
Yeah, I would say that the people that are very successful are generally they're more informed, or they can at least talk to financial planning and those topics, so they know enough to be dangerous. And so there's more maybe convincing, or you have to show your work, so to speak, a little more with them. And I don't necessarily think that makes them harder to work with, because on the flip side, you have people that maybe are more willing to listen to you, but also they're maybe not in a state where there's a lot of good options. So I'm not just saying it depends, but it kind of depends on the context. But I would say that people that are successful and are confident in what they know sometimes are harder to convince of a recommendation. Even though we may know what's right, we may have to go the extra mile and say, add a lot of color to it and explain why.
Show the proof of work.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
when to take Social Security is one of those. One of those things. So I feel like sometimes less educated wants to go one way, and then more educated, obviously wants to go the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting to see how those dynamics go, and because it's really off a feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Or if they talk to their buddy Daryl, Daryl says he's taking it at 62, and they're like, well, that's crazy.
Yeah.
And to make matters worse, you have financial advisors that add confusion just to that topic, because they're like, oh yeah, you should take it sooner. It's like, well, of course, financial advisors' incentive is to you not touch the money that they're managing. So
right.
That's even makes it even more confusing when you have a whole industry that's confused in itself as to why when you should be taking Social Security. All right, so let's talk about some of these biases. So let's talk about the phrase, I should be able to figure this out myself.
Yeah, I think that confident people or high performers or people that, generally know what they're doing, they think, money's not that hard, or maybe, they have a lot of money, or, they don't have to worry about money while they're working. And so they just kind of assume, oh, I can, figure this out. I think that these types of people generally are self-reliant. And so I think that's something that, that is fostered when you're really good at your job and you're doing well financially, at least, as from the income perspective. But kind of like I alluded to earlier, there's more to it than just, money in, money out. There's a lot of tax implications. Like we were even talking about, if you're playing in the stock market, there's ways you can, even if you make money, then you kind of have another problem, right? Especially if you're in the top tax brackets, where you're going to be in those higher capital gains brackets or things like that. So, it's knowing all the different context that's underneath all of the decisions. Because at a high level, it may be easy to understand certain things, but sometimes there's things with clients where it's just a nuanced thing that's like, oh, you probably didn't think of this, and they're like, oh, tax is a pretty key one there. Withdrawal sequencing, that's one we talk about a lot, but that's another important one. Again, mostly because of tax, but it's one of those things where you could save a lot of money by doing one thing versus another. And it may sound really simple when it's a recommendation, but if you had done it the wrong way, just because, oh, my 401k is larger, so I'm going to pull it from there instead of my brokerage account, which is significantly smaller, it may cost you more in the long run just because of taxes and things like that. So it's a small decision sometimes add up.
So this is kind of where DIY versus professional help. These are the exact areas that it tends to start to break down.
Yeah. Yeah. It just always pays to have a good second look at it and make sure you're optimizing things for your situation.
Yeah. I would say that a lot of meetings that I do, I think a lot of people have sort of figured some of this out, but they're not sure how it all pieces together.
Yeah.
And so what we're doing is giving people confidence that they're making the right decision in the end.
Yeah. And I've had more people.
It gives you a lot of peace.
Yeah. Yeah. And and that's kind of a cliche in the industry, but it's true. I've had at least 3 different people that have put their whole financial situation into ChatGPT, and they end up being more confused, and I'm not just throwing shade at ChatGPT, but it is one of those things where it's like, you do need guidance from a person that knows what they're doing. And it's not just, like ChatGPT, just kind of trying to tailor it to you what it thinks you want to hear,
Back in my aviation days, I was a new first officer flying a CRJ 700. And I remember talking the captain, a lot of times pilots talk about money. It was late at night. I think we're coming back from somewhere out west. So you're just kind of sitting there looking at the darkness of the sky. And as I asked a guy, I said, when are you going to retire? Because he looked like he was ready to retire.
Yeah.
And he had like 2 years to go. And he goes, but I'm really behind in my savings. So I've put everything in small cap funds, 100% of my 401k into small cap funds to try to get a higher rate of return.
Yeah.
And I thought that was interesting. I used that actually later on as a reason why we should have pilot workshops on money and education. But and if you're not following that example, and why I'm chuckling is because a small cap fund is typically much more volatile than a large cap fund. And actually large cap's been doing better than small cap. But historically back then, small cap would give you a higher rate of return with a lot more volatility.
Yeah.
So he was hoping in 2 years that he can make more on his money rather than just thinking, this is what I got.
Yeah.
I need to work harder to pay off my debt. Maybe. I mean, I didn't get that much into it with him, but, a lot of things came out of that conversation for me and just how to talk to people about risk. But when you think about someone like him, he's 60, let's say, and versus someone who's 30, how should we think about risk differently?
Yeah. So time is really important in that equation. And one of the things we have written down here is basically that, obviously emotion plays a part in negative, it has a negative impact on your return if you're making, emotional decisions in the market. But something that a lot of people don't think about is if your account goes down, the example we have is if it goes down 20%, it actually, you have to make 25% from that number actually to break even. So you actually have to have more return than what you actually lost in order to break even because of basically the timing and the value change. So,
correct.
That's a small thing. That's kind of an example of this, but, basically once you're at really close to retirement, you want to be preserving what you have. And that's another thing that we'll also touch on, but, an example here is also making sure you have insurance. And a lot of people are sort of negative about insurance because they're like, I'd rather, put that in the market. But for somebody who's built wealth pre-retirement, it makes a lot more sense to be more, like even in a portfolio, we're not going to put you in a super aggressive portfolio if you're going to be having withdrawal needs in the next few years. But in a similar, vein to that, you want to make sure that if you're in a bad car accident or something, that somebody can't sue you for all you're worth. So, these things where wealth is about growing for such a long part, as you're building wealth, right? But you do get to a point where it's more about preservation. And obviously we want to keep up with inflation, so we have to take some risk in the stock market, right? But there is a pivot to, we need to preserve what we have.
So the other part is, I'll just work longer. And so people become overconfident in that statement alone. That I'm just going to work longer. So walk us through what you're telling your clients on what's the reality to that.
Yeah.
I'm going to work longer. Now, I'm not talking about I'm going to work from 60 to 65.
Yeah.
But you're going to work beyond 67, even working beyond 70. I've had people tell me, oh, I'm just going to work until I can't work anymore. And you don't understand, there's only a few people that are working productively past certain ages.
Yeah, I'd have to think through that. But I feel like most of our clients retire around 65 or lower.
Yeah, correct. Well, we're a wealth management firm,
of course.
So we're seeing the best savers for the most part, right? But just in general, we have 9,000 people that will listen to this podcast eventually, right? So not all of them are wiser clients. So if you're thinking that I'm just going to work longer, I mean, what do you say to that?
Well, and that's something, and when we're doing planning, I love showing scenarios, even if the client it's not necessarily a goal of theirs, to show them how early they could retire if the client has a flexible situation. So that's one thing I love showing them, just so they know that, especially if I get some indication, maybe they don't say my goal is to retire early, but I get some indication, maybe they're a little fed up with their job, or like, there's some situation like that. So that's one thing I like to show as an option, but just to know it. And that is important because we actually have a stat here that says, I think it's 40% of retirees end up retiring earlier than they originally planned. And there's a lot of reasons for that. It could be health issues, could be layoffs or things like that, but it could even just be, I'm just tired. I'm ready to be done.
Yeah.
And a lot of people make that decision from an emotional perspective, which is important, but you want to make sure that the numbers actually back up, or that this is actually going to work. So we have clients where we're able to change plans and say, hey, this is what you could actually do, but maybe, the spending needs to change, or there's some sort of lifestyle aspect that needs to be different. And we work with a lot of pilots too. So sometimes that's different for them because they're able to just drop trips, and maybe they're not officially retired fully, but, they're flying the minimum and things like that. So also depending on your job, it could look a little different, but
I think you have to be careful of your own health issues. Layoffs. I believe that age discrimination in the workforce is real, and they don't want you there past a certain age.
It's definitely harder to find work.
You're not going to. It's going to be really hard to find work.
Get laid off.
I'd say post 55 it gets difficult, but definitely post 60 it gets really difficult. Even as an employer myself, we feel like I hire the best people that apply, but you take on someone older, the healthcare premiums are so much bigger. And so if you're looking for mid-sized firms, they're probably paying attention to that too. And that's one of the reasons. Also there's, you could be out because of your health issues. They want a productive workforce. But another thing that people don't think about is caregiving responsibilities. There's so many clients that we have that are caring for their parents still.
Yeah.
And the toll on you for doing that is horrendous. If you don't have the resources to have help, I don't know how people could do a full-time job and care for people at home.
No, yeah. What do they call it? The sandwich generation.
Sandwich generation. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I feel like we see that a lot. Whether it's on the caregiving side for older parents or even stuff with kids. But I feel like we see that all the time.
I don't obviously. Someone said I'm just going to work longer. That's fine. I wouldn't want to build that into a financial plan as a necessity. Just like people say, I'm going to retire at 65, but I always want to work. So I'm going to do part-time work for 5 years. Yeah. It's like, okay, that's great. That's just a bonus, but we're going to make sure you can retire at 65, or I'm going to make sure you can retire at 60 and there's no extra work. A lot of times the extra work doesn't really matter that much anyway.
Or sometimes it doesn't materialize. So maybe somebody plans on it and then they go on a few trips and they're like, wait a minute. I don't know if I want to do that anymore.
I'm done doing this.
Yeah.
Another confidence phrase that we also often hear is my income will carry me. And what that means is that we have high earners who are building wealth, and they think that they're just going to keep working harder and longer, and they'll just keep making more and more and more. And it doesn't really, sometimes it works that way for business owners, maybe because there's a liquidation event at some point, right. But for people working W-2 jobs, I don't know that I would assume that your income keeps climbing.
It's not even that
unless it's contractual.
Yeah.
Right.
I feel like sometimes it hides, spending problems too. Cause like, you can be, have a high income and still have spending problems. And so I think that, it also sets the bar really high for what you're planning on spending in retirement too. And that's something that's important. So when we look at, your spending today versus what you're spending in retirement, if there's a big gap there, that's going to, that'll hit pretty hard probably.
Yeah.
So understanding that is important.
High earners, which the study didn't really, clarify who that is. I assume high earners are anybody over 150. Suggest that 30 to 40% are still living paycheck to paycheck, even though they're making more money.
Yeah.
That's what I tell my kids. Those are rich people.
Right.
You can be rich or you can be wealthy.
Yeah.
Wealth is hidden. You're saving quite a bit. Rich is you make a lot of money, but you don't know where it is at the end of the month.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And I would say, some people hear that and they think we're telling you to be like a miser or something, but it's that's
true.
That's not true. It's
No.
being responsible with what you're given is how I look at it. And it's not, we don't do these things. We just write that off. We never do, the nice trip or whatever it is for you. But you still have to be taking care of yourself.
Actually, I think my client meetings are polar opposite of that. Actually, I'm usually telling people,
That's fair.
you need to be spending money.
Yeah.
And they're like, what? I don't understand. You know, I have to be saving money. It's like, no, you're 72 years old. You're still saving money.
Yeah.
What were you saving it for? Retirement. Well, you've been retired for, 8 to 10 years.
Yeah.
So go live your best life. This is what you saved it for. And there's also a fine line too. I mean, you have to understand that we've worked with so many families. The firm's 25 years old this year.
Yeah.
We've worked with so many families that I have done. I can think of 3 plans where we achieved the goal. We got to the finish line, and then one of the spouses died of cancer.
Mm-hmm.
And it just hurts because, oh my gosh, we did everything we were supposed to do. Right.
Exactly.
And so that is a lesson of, there's a fine line between living beyond your means, but also enjoying life. Right.
Yeah.
So you have to make sure you're taking these opportunities to do things with your family.
Yep.
Or you want to do something for everybody, but then you don't have good health. Or if you're a younger person and you're kind of toting the line for your family, meaning that you're the top of the pyramid when it comes to income and you can help others out.
Right.
Well, if you don't stop and maybe do something that's important with them, you help them, but you didn't spend quality time.
Yeah.
And then you're going to miss that once they're gone.
Yeah.
So there's a fine line there. You do have to stop and do fun things.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you have to protect yourself in the long run, that you're not in a position where you have to find employment.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, again, it goes back to just making sure that you're saving the amount that's appropriate for you, which, sometimes takes a professional. Sometimes you can just use, rough numbers to calculate that. But, we always kind of say it depends on, retirement depends on, how much you're saving now, what you're going to spend in retirement, and then, when you want to retire. And the combination of those 3 things is really important. But sometimes when we're building plans, if somebody has a very high income and then we're like, you can live on 60,000 a year, that doesn't really work. Kind of like just going back to what I said. So that's something that I would pay attention to if you're somebody that's, in a similar situation.
Not all financial advice is created equal. Coming this summer, Everything Your Financial Advisor Won't Tell You. An eye-opening book that reveals what's really happening inside the financial industry and what it takes to build a plan that actually works. Because what you don't know could be costing you.
So if you're watching the podcast, I have a draft copy. This is not for resale across the front. This is our new book. Myself and Shauna and Andrew Pratt all contributed to it. Everything Your Financial Advisor Won't Tell You. So I say this because inside this book, I have a whole chapter on the insurance industry and how I have disdain for whole life insurance and annuities. However, insurance is not a bad investment.
Or maybe not investment. I know that's what it says, but it's
that's true. Insurance should never be an investment.
Yeah.
It should be there for protection. And the bottom line is overconfidence can reduce your ability to see risk.
Mm-hmm.
It's no different than you're 22 years old and you think you're invincible, right?
Yeah.
And then you get in your 40s, you're like, maybe I'm not as invincible.
Yeah.
But you need to have insurance. You need to make sure that you have a term policy or a group policy through work in place to protect your family. You need to think about the real cost of long-term care. People go, oh no, I'd be fine. I don't believe in that. That's what I hear that.
Yeah.
So I don't believe in long-term care. Well,
how many different things I've heard from clients about how they're not going into a home, their plan, if you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Like, I can't tell you how many times I've heard that.
Yeah.
Like,
I got a bolt in my drawer for that. I'm like, no one does that.
No, no,
nobody does that. So there's, yes, there are long-term care policies that you buy and you pay every month. And if you don't use it, you lose it.
Mm-hmm.
But for those that can afford it, there's also long-term care policies that you can buy a policy. If you don't use it, your beneficiaries will get the premiums back.
Right.
It's a life insurance. So it's not the exact premiums. It could be a little less than what you paid in. It could be a little more too, depending on when you passed away. But there are ways that you can kind of make long-term care almost a non-event.
Mm-hmm.
And so for families to go, I want to protect my assets and make sure the next generation receives what I received, then sometimes long-term care will help you with that.
Yeah.
for those who don't really care and they want to go to zero, yeah, we can calculate whether or not you can handle an event like that.
Mm-hmm.
But and a lot of times people never calculate their house. So if the last surviving spouse is alive, you'd sell the house and you could use that. So there's a lot of self-funding ways, but don't discount the ability to have long-term care insurance. Probably another one too is they say, insurance is a bad purchase, is disability insurance.
Yeah.
So people, we've seen people deny their long-term disability from their corporation who's almost paying the entire premium.
Right.
You don't want to do that.
No.
And then this is a hard pill to swallow, but for small business owners, it is really expensive to have disability policies for us. That's one of the reasons I have it. I pay for it for everybody at the firm, because if I just do it by myself, it'd be so much more expensive.
Yeah.
But thinking about, you're more likely to be disabled than you are to be dead.
Well,
early.
Yeah, early.
Right.
But yeah, it's I mean, we have a stat here from Social Security Administration that says 1 in 4 out of today's 20-year-olds will be disabled at some point during their working years.
Yeah.
And I think we've seen that borne out. I mean, we have clients that are, aviation and, working in commercial aviation that are disabled, which is a huge risk to them.
Yep.
But I mean, we have other people as well that have gone through that as well, in terms of just being on this long-term disability, and having those policies in place is very important. And if you have the option of carrying it through your employer, then you probably should.
Yeah. It's just, this is all risk management, and risk management protects your plan.
Mm-hmm.
And so it needs to be there in some form or fashion. It's not all gobbledygook.
Right. We don't want to be doing hardship withdrawals from the 401k because we didn't have long-term care insurance or long-term disability insurance.
And if you did have long-term disability insurance, it's probably going to cover 50 to 65% of your income.
Yeah.
So that's a whole nother problem. So even the people who have it, you're not going to get the same paycheck.
Right.
And your medical expenses have probably gone up because of that too.
Yeah.
So you have to, and if you're not working, who's paying the healthcare premium? You're going to end up on COBRA.
Yeah.
So these are all things that you have to kind of piece together that could derail your life, financially speaking.
Yeah.
If you had to go through it. So again, risk management is something that should be a part of every plan. Something else that I see sometimes with couples is our phrase here is, I don't need to talk about money. So if you make it disappear, or if you avoid uncomfortable conversations about spending habits or what we need or don't need as a family, financially speaking, that's going to create a lot of confusion in relationships. You're going to have estate issues for sure. If you didn't talk about money, no one knows what to do if you're gone.
Yeah.
It creates eating problems. And also it creates decision-making gaps where, there's just a period where no one's making a decision about anything.
Mm-hmm.
You're just kicking the can down the road.
Yeah. I'm probably going to butcher this, but I heard somebody recently say, it was something like those who refuse to face an uncomfortable reality are guaranteed an uncomfortable future.
That's
like
good.
if you're that person that's just not looking at it because it's uncomfortable, then, this is me telling you that you need to look at it. You need to just, it's going to probably stink, whatever that, if you're in a situation where you're not wanting to look at it, that's probably not good. Or maybe it's not as, what you want. But the longer you go without paying attention to it, it's just going to get worse. So you do have to kind of rip the Band-Aid off and pay attention to it.
I was sent a client's son and daughter-in-law recently, and they said, would you talk to him about money? I said, sure. Didn't know really what I was walking into.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a bad situation. They had just all kinds of debt. Income was okay. Wasn't horrible. I told them they were too rich to be this broke, which is a Dave Ramsey quote.
Yeah.
But in the end, I remember saying, okay, look, you can pretty much do anything over an 18-month time span. 18 months seems like a long time, but it's really not. But you got to buckle down. Here's a debt elimination strategy. Putting this together all on the fly. And I remember my wife goes, as I get older, I get more blunt. But the wife goes, so you mean we can't take a vacation this summer? And I was like, I mean that if you can, but that vacation could be what spirals you into bankruptcy, and you'd have a hard time taking a vacation for a long time.
Yeah.
Sometimes people just need to be told the truth. And in almost all the situations, the two people I'm talking to, you can tell there's tension. Like, like either one's being drug in or one's coming in out of fear or whatever. But you're sitting there talking to them, and you're like, I'm here to. First of all, you're not even paying me. I'm volunteering 30 to 45 minutes of my time to help you through this. But my job is to tell you the truth. And that goes for even people who are paying us. Sometimes the truth is not pleasant, but you need to hear the truth. But I don't present problems without solutions.
Right.
So I was presenting the solution to the problem, but they didn't particularly like that too much.
Yeah.
But you could tell that they knew that they were in a bad situation, but they didn't know what to do, and they weren't really discussing it with each other.
Yeah. And that's one of those things where, I mean, along these same lines, I feel like some people, they're looking for a shortcut, and sometimes there's one way out, and it's through.
Yeah.
Especially in a debt situation.
Yeah.
It's like, there's really not a shortcut here.
It's not refinancing it. It's not taking equity out of your house.
Yeah.
I mean, if you take equity out of your house and then you pay off your debts, you feel better, but then the debt's just somewhere else. And if you screw up again, you have another $80,000 in credit card debt, and now your house is fully remortgaged. Well, then what do you do?
Yeah.
So you have to just kind of address it where it is. Yeah, there's some common sense things like, hey, I'm paying 30%. I'm going to refinance this into 5 or 8 or 9 or 10 even.
Right.
But then you still have to get after that.
You still have to be aggressive. It's not buying you time necessarily. It's like you still have to be just as aggressive as if it was at 30%.
Yeah. Refinancing is not solving the problem. It's just covering the problem up with a blanket going. Yeah.
It's making it a little less worse over time.
Right.
But yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I don't want that to sound judgmental. Stuff happens. People get medical expenses. They have low paying or I should say underpaying jobs or out of work for a little while. Things happen.
Yeah.
I don't really care how we got here. It's just in that particular conversation, it was like, we want to keep living our best life and just not address one spouse didn't want to address the issue.
Right.
I was like, you have to address this or else you're going to be, 60 years old in 10 years, still with the same issue, and that you're going to be working the rest of your life.
Yeah.
So again, communication is important. This is what's important to us. And also it's a source of a lot of contention in marriages.
Mm-hmm.
So it's always good to have a plan, put everybody on the same page.
Yeah.
What we do is a lot like counseling. Sometimes I wonder if I should have majored in psychology, minored in finance.
Yeah. It's a lot of aspects of that for sure.
Another overconfidence kind of top or phrase, I guess, is success in my career means I'm good with money. It doesn't just mean you're good with money. It just means you're really good at something else that makes you money.
Yeah, maybe this is anecdotal, but I feel like this is very true of people with high stress jobs too, or jobs that they know they have a lot of weight on them.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to name them, but you can kind of put, 2 and 2 together with that. There's a lot of that with people that they're high performers. They have a lot of pressure on them. A lot of people depend on them, and they're just like, I don't know. There's a little bit more to those types of people. But at the end of the day, what we've already said still applies here. It's like income isn't wealth, and it's not, it can end very quickly. So that's, again, taking the steps that we've already talked about are very important.
Yeah. I think common issues we see with super high earners is typically they're overpaying on taxes. They have concentrated stock positions because they chose the stock or they work at a company and they received the stock. And sometimes you do have to carry a lot of company stock because the company knows you own the stock and you have to show that you're a team player.
Right. Or it's a private company, which is even more different or more layered.
Yeah. And that's okay. But if you're making good money, you should be able to help try to diversify that in other ways.
Right.
You keep buying the company stock or you keep receiving it. You're not going to sell it because that makes you look like you don't believe in the mission.
Right.
But there's other ways to get diversification. So I don't know. This is kind of fun. We put some of these things together. These are things that I think we butt up against all the advisors here on a weekly basis. How do you break these patterns? So how do you get out of I'm doing just fine. I think this sounds a little self-serving. I don't do the podcast to be self-serving, but it sounds a little self-serving. You should get a second opinion.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It could be a fee-only financial advisor, but
yeah, you can go to NAPA.com
exactly.
or .org. You can find fee-only financial advisor near you.
ChatGPT does not count. Maybe for really basic things, but
yeah, you can find a fee-only planner and pay for a one-time plan and see if your strategy is correct. You want to build a coordinated strategy, not just accounts. So I think what that means is like you have a risk management strategy, you have a portfolio management strategy, you have
estate planning.
Yes, estate planning strategy. All these things kind of work together in sync. So that's really important. And then also to stress test. We actually have software that does this. It'll show, hey, what happens to this portfolio if there's a major market downturn?
Mm-hmm.
Early retirement, again, you can do that in our second planning meeting of 3 that we do, or 4, depending on which plan you're on.
Right.
You can actually show you, hey, if you retire at 60 or 55 or 50, this is what can happen.
Yeah.
Right? I did a plan with a couple last week that it was a review meeting. It wasn't a full-fledged plan. But the review meeting was basically having them, their number looked low for what they made.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized they were both retiring at 50.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you're retiring. That's right. You're retiring at 50. There's no way these people retire at 50. They're too just engaged in their careers and what they're doing.
Right.
I don't see them walking away, but I thought, well, that's good to know that they could retire at 50.
Exactly.
They know what that looks like.
Yeah.
Another thing too is stress testing is a health event. So if you're disabled and you had to be out of work for a while,
yep.
Think for men, especially think, heart conditions, things that take you out of the,
again, especially high performers, if you're in a high stress role, that could be more of a factor for you, honestly.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you should always involve your spouse and partner in planning. And to be honest with you, I'm very reluctant to do plans when it's just one person in the family that's doing it. A lot of times it's husbands are like, oh, my wife's just not involved in this. Well, she should be involved in this because that will she'll understand what the mission is, and we all need to be held accountable.
Yep.
So she's like, hey, this doesn't seem like, buying this Porsche 911 didn't seem like that was part of the overall plan. And maybe it's the man that doesn't want to hear that. He doesn't want that accountability. So I want to kind of figure that out at the beginning of any relationships. Hey, we need to be doing this together. We need to be stronger as a unit. Yeah. At the end of these meetings. So, a written plan, we have, our written plans are actually a client portal you log into, and you can see and manipulate the plan yourself.
Yeah.
But they typically have, people with a written plan, report better outcomes. That's a Schwab, and a CFP board study that showed that. Really, the biggest financial mistakes aren't necessarily math problems. I would say that they're mindset problems. So we have a way of thinking about something. We're going to take Social Security as early as we can at 62 because it won't be there for us.
Right.
That's false. And we have lots of podcasts on that you can search for.
Yeah.
What's another?
Which is ultimately like fear. You're letting fear dictate.
You're in fear. Yeah, that's true. I'm trying to think of another thing that people often come in and state as a fact. I would say that there's going to be a recession this year.
Yeah.
We've heard this for 10 years, and over the last 10 years, I think there was a recession for 3 days, maybe.
Something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah.
There is so much fiscal stimulus happening with the government right now. I don't know if we'll ever have a real technical recession ever again. Because anytime the politicians have figured out that if a recession starts occurring, that they can print more money and flood the system, and that recession won't happen.
Yeah.
And sometimes we need a healthy recession.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, the recession's coming this year. The market's going to be down. No, you don't know that. And what data could you show me which data? Because
that's usually what it boils down to, is just a gut feeling too.
It's a gut feeling.
Yeah.
It's just that I have a gut feeling it's not going to be good this year. It's like, well, BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street all say you're wrong.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Or they let politics. That's another one.
Yeah.
Oh, so-and-so is elected. This person's going to just tank the economy.
Yeah.
There's very little correlation between the president and the economy.
Yeah.
A little more correlated with the current administration, just because the people in the administration are from Wall Street. I don't know when the last time that happened. I can't think of a time that they were super connected like they are right now.
Yeah.
But this is the first administration that I remember in modern times, and I look back in history that keeps an eye on the value of the stock market.
Yeah.
The ones in the past were like, oh, we can't control any of this. We can't control any of this. If it's good, they try to claim it, but it's not correlated. And this administration has figured out they can say things to manipulate it even.
Yeah.
So that won't be forever though.
No,
that'll probably end with this administration, quite honestly.
Yeah.
So but anyway, for the data, even with the current administration, when they were in the first time, the data between the market and the president is not correlated. If you like to show me research on that, you can, but I've read probably 1,000 pages worth of research data on this. And there's just no correlation. It's in our heads.
Yep.
It's all in our heads.
Yep.
So, I don't know. I think, the question is, which of these beliefs do you think cost people the most over time?
Not looking at it is, to me, the most.
Not looking at your
finances. Because I think all the other ones, at least you're thinking about it maybe to a degree, but I think not looking at it is probably the worst one. Especially if you have a certain, lifestyle that you want to maintain, and maybe your assets don't actually match that. So that's to me, that's the worst one.
The whole Social Security thing, it just costs people so much money, but I would say most people that are paying us money to educate them and to create a plan for them, that I'd say 90%, 95% are listening. So maybe that's not necessarily costing them money.
Yeah.
I would say for the people we haven't met yet, then yeah, probably the cost of not having a plan. That's probably you just by chance. You're just hoping by chance things work out.
Right.
And it doesn't, you can, maybe there's a 50-50 chance, but if you have a plan, you can get much closer. It's not going to never be 100%.
Mm-hmm.
There's always the zombie apocalypse.
Yeah. What are they? The black swan
events that can happen for sure.
Yeah.
But even a great financial crisis, again, I know that with confidence that our clients could survive that. It wouldn't be pretty.
Yeah.
It'd be hard work to keep everybody moving the same direction as far as what to do in that case.
It's one of those things that may change behaviors at some point.
Yeah.
Meaning you may decide to keep working, but we know that you could retire if that happened. So it's, again, it goes back to this discussion, making sure that you know what your options are.
Oh, I know another one that people, people think they're really smart when they say this, and the math probably works in their favor, is that they're not going to pay off their house.
Mm-hmm.
Is they don't pay off their house because their house is a 2.75% mortgage. And they can get way more than that in the market.
Yeah.
So it's better to leave it in the market. But any plan you run, it's better to pay off the debt and eliminate all the market risk.
Because of the cash flow.
Because of the cash flow. So retiring is about cash flow. It's not about necessarily rate of return. It's about the cash flow. So the less cash flow you have going out, the less that you need, which means more stays in the portfolio and you can make more money over the long run. There's
less withdrawal requirement on the portfolio, which means in the simulation that we're running, you have basically less risk that's tied up in the market.
Yep. From
the perspective of your daily cash flow.
Yep. It almost looks like it's like it treats it like a guaranteed pension payment if you're paying off that house in terms of not having to pay that money out anymore.
Right.
So yeah, that's probably a big one. But I don't feel like we have to convince people to do that very often. I think most people are like, oh, got it.
And now rates are higher too, so it's a little less of a discussion. But I did see one recently that was under 2%. It was like 1 point something. And I was like, wow, okay, you're never getting that again.
Yeah, it just comes down to cash flow, having peace that your house is paid off. Your primary home. Second, third, investment properties, that's a little different. But yeah. All right. Well, thanks for the conversation, William. Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you're interested in learning more about Wiser Wealth Management or want to schedule a consultation and meet with one of our fiduciary financial advisors, you can do so by going to wiserinvestor.com. You can click the link in the episode notes as well. See you guys next week.
Thanks for listening to a Wiser Retirement podcast. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Make sure to subscribe wherever you're listening. That way you don't miss any new episodes. We'd also appreciate if you could leave a rating and review. If you have any questions about anything that was discussed today, head to wiserinvestor.com and reach out. This podcast is strictly for informational purposes only and is not to be considered as investment advice or solicitation to buy or sell any financial products, securities, digital assets, or any other investment vehicles, or a basis to make any financial decisions. Wiser Wealth Management Incorporated is a registered investor advisor with the SEC. The host and/or guests may personally own securities, digital assets, or other investment vehicles mentioned on this podcast. Neither the host nor guests of the show are compensated for their participation, and no referral fees are paid to or received by any host or guest for clients, listeners, or similar interests. Investments involve risk, and unless otherwise stated, are not guaranteed. Be sure to first consult with a qualified financial advisor, tax professional, insurance professional, and/or legal professional before implementing any strategy discussed herein. Past performance is not indicative of future performance.